Hi. Um, it's been a little bit since my last video. Um, Not that anybody's waiting or watching, or well, a few people are watching, and thank you. I appreciate your encouragement. I think one or two people had even commented, and I appreciate the engagement. But that's, as I mentioned, that's not why why I started this little project. Sorry, I want to go outside, but I realize I have my coffee and I want to grab it. So, it's been a minute since I last posted, and I'm a little frustrated with myself. I didn't make any kind of commitment that I was going to do this daily or weekly, but it's my hope that at least weekly. And my topics are going to be the things I wanted to talk about, pertain to myself or the world at large, and just things that seem important to me to talk about. About 2 weeks ago, my partner, noticing that I was up late, asked me, what I was doing, and I was writing, and said, "What are you writing?" And I was, at that point, I came out, so to speak, and told him that I was posting videos on YouTube about things I was talking about, and like just ideas. Nothing. There was no like agenda. And the thing I was specifically writing about at that time was a matter regarding smart home devices and the seeming increasingly less and less consumer-friendly attitudes with potential moves to abandon these smart home systems by these major tech companies that have been pushing them on us for the last, decade or more, like Google Home, Siri, Alexa, and the way it will impact not just the people who have adopted the systems as conveniences to their homes and their lives and lifestyles, but people who are differently abled and rely on them, for people who are visually abled, and what a boon it's been to have, Google will be able to tell them what time it is and the temperature, yada yada. But that's a topic for another time, never mind. What I wanted to talk about today was a little more, I just saw in the news yesterday that the famed singer Harry Belafonte passed away. And, this isn't about Harry Belafonte. More so it's about, people who are famous. But maybe you might recognize the name, or you recognize their contributions, but you're not sure why you know who they are. There's an underbelly to fame and Hollywood and the collective, social consciousness, for so many things that people are not aware of. Obviously, the passing of Betty White on New Year's Eve last year, that was a heavy blow. But a more recent death, which I wonder if anybody, apart from a nerd like me, would have observed, was the death of Jan Rabson. You're like, who the hell is Jan Rabson? Now, I couldn't give you an exhaustive list of Jan Rabson's voiceover talent credits, but to anyone who may have played point-and-click computer video games in the last 30 years, particularly those from the company known formerly as Sierra Online, the name Leisure Suit Larry might ring a bell. Leisure Suit Larry was a adult-oriented, comedic, graphic, point-and-click computer game series created by the incomparable and still active, talented jazz musician and indispensable funny man, Al Lowe. And if you're watching this video and you crave a little laughter in your life, you should subscribe to Al Lowe's Cyber Joke 3000, 2000, 5000. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. I get it in my inbox every day. It's just a couple of jokes and some interesting links. Al Lowe has a pretty good website you should check out. It's like Al Lowe's laugh site. Can't think of the website .com. Just Google it. ALLOWE. That's Al Lowe. You're welcome, Al. I love voice acting. I think voice acting has recently started to gain more recognition, and there are indeed, at least in the circles of people who appreciate media that relies on voice acting, i.e., like cartoons and animation. If you see some names being mentioned that they're going to be showing up at certain, anime conventions and, PAX East and things like that, the crowd generally goes wild. And I couldn't give you an exhaustive list of contemporary people, but it's, there's so many people who, if you enjoy cartoons, if you derive pleasure from, your memories of Saturday morning cartoons and sitting in front of the TV and, watching Huckleberry Hound or Super Friends or, SpongeBob or, Steven Universe or Dexter's Laboratory, Real Monsters. I mean, there's billions of cartoons. I couldn't give you a list here. It seems to be the phrase of the day. I can't give an exhaustive list. But, there was a time in the history of animation where voice acting was, you were considered so low on the totem pole that until probably the late 30s, 40s, there were very few people who, if they contributed their voice talent to a Merry Melody or Looney Tune or a Silly Symphony, would receive on-screen credit, amongst, the listing of the people who did the animation, the directors, with the exceptions of titans of that time, like the golden god himself, Mel Blanc, the guy who voiced Bugs Bunny, Yosemite Sam, Elmer Fudd, Porky Pig. I couldn't even begin to tell you all that. He's known as the man of 1,000 voices, and he didn't even just do voices of people and characters. He also voiced sound effects with his vocal cords, and it was just astounding. And he was one of the few people that would receive vocal on-screen credit for his vocalizations and characterizations. But as time went on and the industry became more complex, and you had things like the Screen Actors Guild and the Academy Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and more stratification to the industry, and there became more and more rights enshrined, and contracts became more replete, and standards more widespread. It started to be that it wasn't just one person receiving a blank, characterizations provided by a screen credit. You started to see, Ariel, portrayed by Jodie Benson, kind of, credit where credit was due. And there are so many people, I have an immense respect for this industry because acting is difficult enough as it is. A lot of people think, oh, how hard can it be? But as I can attest from my aborted efforts to pursue acting, it is an incredibly demanding and nuanced art. And there's just something about if you're not capable of adopting a convincing persona in person to convey emotion and thought and art on a stage or in front of a television screen, then doubly or triply so is the demands of voice acting, because you don't have the benefit of representing yourself, and you have to match your characterizations to the motions of the character on screen. And sometimes you're not acting alongside your fellow actors. You might be shown a video of the animation, or the scene you're depicting, or you obviously you have a script, but that's about it. You don't get to kind of bounce off of your co-stars and kind of feed into that environment. And I think of a few voice actors and actresses who have passed away recently, because we are, the golden age of Hollywood was from the late 30s with the advent of the talkies, up until about the late 50s, early 60s, which was the heyday of a lot of the actors that we consider, screen legends, like Rita Hayworth, Clark Gable, Carol Lombard, Peter Lorre. I don't, my brain just is a blank, but, Barbara Stanwyck, Joan Crawford, it's just all of those heavyweights. If anyone is still alive from that era, they're in their hundreds or dead. And the same thing goes for voice actors from that era. June Foray, who probably is a name that very few people outside of those who would recognize and appreciate the voice acting industry would recognize, but she provided as many, if not more, vocal characterizations than Mel Blanc. She voiced Tweety, she voiced Granny, she voiced Natasha and Bullwinkle from Bullwinkle and Rocky. Those are just a few off the top of my head. And if you're interested, you can watch YouTube videos of these people. June Foray lived to be 99, and she was just just a short time shy of her 100th birthday. And she passed away a few years back. And, and she was still working right up until the end. And it's just mind-boggling. But a lot of the people say it keeps them young. You don't have the demands of location shooting. You get to walk into a recording booth, and you can have your drink next to you, and you don't have to dress up or put on makeup or be screen tested. And so that I think of the uncelebrated passings, or the unmourned, not celebrated as in, I should say, observed passings of these people. I remember several years ago, Christine Cavanaugh passed away. And again, even probably for people who are in the industry, you might say, who was Christine Cavanaugh? I would hope nobody in the voice acting industry would say, who is Christine Cavanaugh? She was the voice of Chucky from Rugrats, Oblina from Our Real Monsters. She was the original voice of Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. And she passed away, sadly, in her early 50s. It was publicly an undisclosed illness, and though I suspect I know what the cause was, out of respect to her and the wish for her privacy, I won't say what I have learned, but it was a tragic thing. And it's one of those things where a lot of people, due to the isolation and lack of recognition in the greater public consciousness of voice actors, you don't have voice actors walking down the red carpet and people screaming for autographs, but their talent for acting and in conveying emotion and performing their art and demonstrating their range, which I think is such an important thing, because in Hollywood, looks can take you 50% of the way, and with careful editing and recuts and retouching and airbrushing and photoshopping and CGI now, you can get away with a lot. In voice acting, your looks aren't going to take you anywhere. I mean, you have the benefit that, if you look bad, you can certainly get far if you have the capability. But you have to rely on your talent alone. And There's just so many actors who are still out there who I have such a profound respect for. There are still acting, that have been acting for 30, 40, 50 years. And I don't think a lot of people, you might say you might be watching a cartoon and then you watch another cartoon days, weeks, months later, and you might be like, that guy sounds like the guy who voices so-and-so in blah, blah, blah. And chances are he probably is. If you look up some of these actors and you look up their names and you look up their credits, because of the ability to just be in a sounds booth, they can probably knock out several, shows in a day. Whereas an actor, a screen actor, let me put it this way. A screen actor might have between 100 and 300 voice acting credits. A voice actor could have between 300 and 1,000 acting credits in a similar timeline of a career. And practice makes perfect. The more you do something, the better at you become. And there are always fresh blood coming into the field. There's always new people with talent entering, and that's important. That's good. But to the talent that's already there, and if you're still working, if you're still making us laugh, if you're still making us smile, if you're still making the most ridiculous sounds, and if you watch any of these like behind the microphone type videos where you see these people as they encapsulate their character, I think you would see the epitome of character acting in its most concentrated form. I'm not talking like Daniel Day-Lewis going and living in a log cabin before he, filmed some of his roles or, things of that nature. But I mean, just how into a character these people become and how animated and how expressive. And if you were to see someone acting that way on the street, you would think them a lunatic and probably have the opinion that they need to be locked up. But when they get behind a microphone and they voice some of these timeless, classic, beloved on-screen personas, and you sit back and watch by yourself with friends or your loved ones, and you smile or laugh or cry, you owe them as much your applause as you would, any of the great screen actors. So just be mindful, when you sit down and watch Scooby-Doo or Adventure Time or Rick and Morty or Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, or the Snorks or the Smurfs or Alvin and the Chipmunks, or even when you play computer games, when you play Warcraft, when you play Fortnite, when you play Poppy Playtime, when you play King's Quest, when you play Doom, when you play BioShock, Final Fantasies, when you play these games or watch these cartoons, please remember that these are not voices being generated by a computer in a studio. These are artists who have honed their craft, who have dedicated their life to their living, which is creating content for you, creating a performance that is, with very few exceptions, a masterstroke. So remember them the next time you tune in. Thanks.